The emergency session of the Confederation Council convened within 48 hours of the Battle of Sol, as shockwaves from the human victory rippled throughout galactic civilization. For the first time in recorded history, a protected species had not only resisted superior military force, but had made conquest so costly that the attackers chose retreat over victory. Senator Kate Williams stood before the assembled representatives of dozens of alien species, her bearing completely transformed from the supplicant diplomat who had begged for mining rights months earlier. The recording of Admiral Morrison's final transmission played on every screen in the vast chamber, his words echoing through the hall with haunting clarity. To any who would threaten human sovereignty, we did not seek this conflict, but we will not flee from it. Today we have shown that human strength was never what you believed it to be. Our power was never in our individual bodies or our technology. Our strength is in our willingness to stand together and die for what we believe in, regardless of the odds. The political earthquake was immediate and devastating. The Draconic Empire's entire military doctrine had been built on intimidation and overwhelming technological superiority. Their withdrawal from Sol after suffering heavy casualties sent a clear message to every species under their control. The mighty Draconics could be made to bleed. Within 2 weeks of the battle, 3 Draconic client worlds declared independence. The Altarian Republic, the Vegan Collective, and the Tau Centauri Federation all announced they would no longer accept Draconic protection or pay tribute to the Empire. They had seen that even the fearsome Draconic military could be defeated by determined resistance. Council Prime Zex Val of the Zarians requested a private meeting with Senator Williams in the days following the emergency session. The crystalline being's previous attitude of benevolent condescension had been replaced by something approaching genuine respect and perhaps a touch of fear. "We fundamentally misunderstood your species," Zex Val admitted as they sat in a private chamber overlooking the Confederation capital. "We measured your worth by individual physical capabilities and technological advancement. We failed to account for the power of collective determination." Senator Williams leaned back in her chair, studying the alien leader who had once spoken to her like a parent addressing a child. "You failed to understand that weakness can become strength. Every limitation you identified forced us to become more adaptable, more innovative, more unified. While your species evolved individual power, ours evolved the ability to work together. The strategic implications were profound and terrifying to the established galactic powers. Military analysts throughout the Confederation began studying human tactical doctrine and made disturbing discoveries. Human military formations could absorb casualty rates that would cause complete moral collapse in alien units. Human commanders routinely made decisions that prioritized mission success over unit preservation. Most significantly, human forces seemed to become more dangerous when cornered rather than less. War Commander Velthar of the Mantari submitted a classified report that would revolutionize galactic military thinking. Human combat effectiveness appears to increase in direct proportion to the severity of their tactical situation. Standard intimidation tactics, which force most species into defensive postures, cause humans to adopt increasingly aggressive and unpredictable behaviors. But the real transformation in human status came 6 months later, when the Confederation faced its greatest external threat in over a millennium. The Void Swarm emerged from the galactic rim like a plague of living ships, consuming entire star systems and converting their matter into more bio-vessels. The swarm was a hive mind species that had evolved in the space between galaxies. There, ships were grown rather than built, immune to most energy weapons and capable of self-repair using consumed matter. Most terrifying of all, their numbers seemed infinite, with new vessels emerging from consumed worlds faster than the Confederation fleets could destroy them. 3 major alien battle groups had been completely annihilated, attempting to stop the swarm's advance. The Zerial Fifth Fleet, pride of their military, lasted less than 4 hours against the bioships. The Hydro's deep strike force was overwhelmed within minutes when the swarm vessels proved immune to their electromagnetic weapons. When Confederation Command finally swallowed their pride and requested human military assistance, Senator Williams had only one condition: full membership and equal status for humanity. with complete recognition of human territorial sovereignty and retroactive approval of all previous human claims. The terms were accepted within hours, as alien leaders faced the possibility of galactic extinction. Admiral Patricia Brooks, Morrison's hand-picked successor, led the combined human-alien fleet toward the Vega system, where the swarm had established its largest breeding facility. Her tactical approach horrified her alien allies and completely baffled the enemy. While standard galactic doctrine called for maintaining safe engagement distances and using superior firepower to destroy enemy vessels, Brooks ordered her ships into close-range combat where the swarm's numerical advantages were minimized. Her human crews, already accustomed to accepting heavy casualties for tactical objectives, pressed attacks that alien crews would have considered suicidal. The battle raged for 18 hours across 7 planets and 3 asteroid fields. Human ships rammed swarm biovessels when their weapons proved ineffective. Human boarding parties fought hand-to-hand combat inside enemy ships that were literally alive and trying to digest them. Human pilots flew damaged fighters on one-way missions to deliver specially designed biological weapons into swarm nursery ships. The turning point came when Commander Greg Foster of the heavy cruiser, UES Indomitable, used his ship's damaged reactor to punch through the bioarmor of a massive swarm mothership. His crew had developed viral warfare packages based on human immune system research, designed to attack the biological computers that controlled swarm vessels. Foster and his entire crew died when the mothership's death throes tore their vessel apart, but their sacrifice released a biological plague that spread through the swarm fleet faster than their organic systems could adapt. Within hours, hundreds of bioships were dying as their own biological systems turned against them. The Void Swarm, which had never encountered an enemy willing to sacrifice everything for victory, began a complete withdrawal from the galaxy. Their hive mind could not comprehend opponents who would destroy themselves to achieve strategic objectives, and they classified the galaxy as too dangerous for conquest. In the aftermath of the Swarm War, the balance of galactic power had shifted, permanently. Humanity was no longer a protected species or junior member of the Confederation. They had become the troubleshooters, the military force called upon when conventional tactics and overwhelming firepower were insufficient. The transformation was evident in every aspect of galactic politics. Human military advisors were requested by species facing difficult conflicts. Human tactical doctrine was studied in military academies throughout the galaxy. Human diplomatic proposals were given serious consideration rather than dismissive tolerance. Admiral Brooks stood on the observation deck of the rebuilt Nexus Prime Station and watched mixed human-alien fleets conducting joint training exercises. The sight would have been unimaginable just 2 years earlier, when humanity was still classified as a primitive species needing protection. Dr. Paul Bennett, now promoted to head of xenobiology research for the Confederation, had spent months analyzing the cultural changes brought about by human integration. His findings confirmed what many suspected. Humanity's willingness to sacrifice for principles rather than survival had fundamentally altered how alien species viewed strength and weakness. They measured us by their own standards and found us wanting, he explained in his report to the Confederation Science Council. But those standards were based on individual capability rather than collective determination. They never considered that a species might choose principles over survival, or that apparent weakness might mask incredible strength. The galaxy had learned a lesson that would echo through centuries of future conflicts. True military power was not always measured in technology or individual prowess. Sometimes the greatest strength came from the willingness to lose everything, rather than accept defeat. 5 years after the Battle of Sol, Ambassador Lisa Carter stood in the Memorial Hall aboard the UES Morrison, humanity's newest flagship named, in honor of the admiral who had changed everything. The walls were covered with the names of humans who had died not because they were weak, but because they chose to be strong when strength mattered most. Through the viewports, she could see human and alien ships flying in perfect formation, partners in the truest sense. The galaxy had finally learned to respect the species that had turned vulnerability into resilience, limitations into innovations, and weakness into unbreakable strength. The aliens had thought humans were weak, and in many ways they had been correct. Humans were physically frail, technologically primitive and individually inferior by galactic standards. But that weakness had become their greatest asset, forcing them to develop strengths that no other species possessed. The crisis that would change everything began with what should have been a routine scientific mission. Dr. Helen Ross and her team of 12 researchers were aboard the UES Discovery, conducting stellar cartography in the Tau Ceti system. They were mapping gravitational anomalies around the system's outer planets when 3 massive ships suddenly appeared on their sensors. Commander Rex Thompson was reviewing the day's survey data when his communications officer reported the incoming vessels. The ships were draconic design, heavily armed warships that dwarfed the small research vessel. Commander Thompson immediately ordered his crew to defensive positions and opened a communications channel. Unknown. Draconic vessels. This is Commander Thompson of the UES Discovery, he transmitted. We are conducting peaceful scientific research in unclaimed space. Please identify yourselves and state your intentions. The response came within seconds, delivered in the harsh tones typical of draconic military communications. Human vessel, you are trespassing in draconic territorial space. I am Battle Captain Zorex Alpha of the war vessel Bone Crusher. You will surrender your data cores immediately and prepare to be escorted from this system. Commander Thompson quickly checked his navigation charts and confirmed what he already knew. The Discovery was operating in unclaimed space, at least 15 light-years from the nearest draconic border. The system had been clearly marked as open territory during their pre-mission briefing. Battle Captain, I must respectfully disagree, Thompson replied. Our navigation shows this system as unclaimed territory. We have proper authorization from the Confederation Science Council for our research activities here. The draconic response was swift and menacing. 3 more ships appeared from hyperspace surrounding the human vessel. Your charts are outdated, Primitive One. This system now falls under draconic protection, as of standard galactic date 2157-4. You will comply with our instructions or face the consequences of your trespass. Dr. Ross joined Commander Thompson on the bridge as the situation escalated. She had spent years preparing for this mission and knew the legal protocols for research in disputed space. Commander, even if they have filed a territorial claim which they cannot do legally without Confederation approval, we still have right of safe passage for scientific missions. Commander Thompson tried to contact Confederation authorities to verify the draconic claims but found all his communications being jammed by the alien warships. The Discovery was completely cut off from outside help, surrounded by vessels that could destroy them in seconds. For the next 6 hours, the human crew found themselves prisoners in everything but name. A draconic boarding party came aboard under the pretense of inspecting their research data and scientific equipment. What followed was systematic intimidation, designed to demonstrate draconic superiority over the weak humans. The security footage from that inspection would later become crucial evidence, though at the time no one expected it to survive. The draconic soldiers moved through the Discovery like conquerors examining their prize. They destroyed delicate scientific instruments with casual indifference, contaminated biological samples that had taken months to collect, and treated the human crew with open contempt. Dr. Ross tried to explain the importance of their gravitational research, but the draconic squad leader simply pushed her aside with enough force to break her wrist. Silence, weak one, he growled. Your primitive measurements are worthless compared to draconic sensor technology. 2 graduate students who tried to protect their research samples were confined in a storage compartment without life support for 20 minutes as a lesson in proper respect for draconic authority. The torture was brief but effective, leaving both young scientists gasping and traumatized when they were finally released. The worst part was the deliberate nature of the abuse. The Draconics were not simply being careless or efficient. They were sending a message about the proper relationship between superior and inferior species. Every broken instrument, every destroyed sample, every moment of fear was calculated to reinforce human helplessness. When the inspection finally ended, Battle Captain Zorex Alpha delivered his final warning. You will leave this system immediately and never return. If we find humans in draconic space again, the consequences will be far more severe. Remember this day and learn your place in the galaxy. The Discovery limped away from the Tau Ceti system with half its equipment destroyed, and its crew shaken by their treatment. The journey back to Earth took 3 days, during which Commander Thompson compiled a detailed report of the incident, and Dr. Ross documented every act of deliberate sabotage against their research. The reaction on Earth was immediate and explosive. The security footage from the Discovery was broadcast on every news network, showing the galaxy exactly how the Draconics treated human citizens. The image of Dr. Ross being shoved and injured simply for trying to protect her research became a symbol of alien contempt for human dignity. President Hamilton called an emergency session of the United Nations Security Council within hours of receiving the Discovery's report. The footage played on screens throughout the assembly hall as world leaders watched their citizens being brutalized by alien forces. "This is not an isolated incident," President Hamilton declared to the assembly. "This is a test. The Draconics are seeing how much abuse humanity will accept before we respond. They are gambling that our desire for galactic acceptance will override our basic self-respect." The formal complaint filed with the Confederation authorities was detailed and comprehensive. It included sensor logs proving the Discovery had been in unclaimed space, medical records documenting the injuries to the crew, and complete documentation of the destroyed research materials worth millions of dollars. The Confederation's response was swift and predictable. An investigation committee was formed consisting of 3 Xerians, 2 Hydros, and 1 human representative. The committee would examine all evidence and determine if any violations of galactic law had occurred. 3 weeks later, the committee released its findings. The incident was classified as an unfortunate misunderstanding arising from communication difficulties and territorial confusion. No laws had been technically broken because the Draconics claimed to have filed territorial papers that were delayed in bureaucratic processing. The committee recommended that both sides exercise greater caution in the future and suggested that humans avoid operating in potentially disputed regions until territorial claims could be properly verified. No punitive action would be taken against the Draconic forces involved. The message could not have been clearer if it had been written in fire across the sky. Human rights were negotiable. Human dignity was expendable. Human lives were less valuable than maintaining peaceful relations with militarily powerful species. The response from Earth was unlike anything the aliens had ever seen from humanity. President Hamilton's address to the world was broadcast not just to human colonies, but throughout the Confederation Communication Network. "For 3 years we have tried to be good galactic citizens," he said. "We have been patient with condescension, diplomatic about discrimination, and accommodating about abuse. We believed that proving our peaceful intentions would earn us respect and equality. We were wrong." The President's words resonated throughout human space and beyond. "Our patience has been interpreted as weakness. Our diplomacy has been seen as submission. Our desire for peace has been taken as an invitation to walk over us whenever convenient." What the aliens did not know was that President Hamilton's speech was coordinated with secret military preparations that had been underway for months. Admiral Morrison was quietly recalled from Confederation headquarters and given new orders that would have shocked the alien leadership if they had known. Project Phoenix shifted into high gear as human shipyards throughout the solar system began working around the clock. The official story was a routine modernization of the human fleet, but the reality was far more significant. Humanity was preparing for war. The Draconic Empire misread the human response completely. General Theric Prime interpreted President Hamilton's speech as empty posturing designed to mollify domestic opinion. "The humans bluster and complain, but they lack the strength to back up their words," he reported to his superiors. The Draconics decided to press their advantage while humanity was still reeling from the humiliation. They announced plans to establish protective garrisons in several human-controlled systems to ensure proper security and prevent future territorial misunderstandings. The garrison announcement was the final provocation. Every human citizen understood what it meant: military occupation disguised as protection. The aliens were no longer content with treating humans as inferiors. They wanted to make that inferiority permanent and official. As draconic fleets began, moving toward human space, they carried with them the confidence that came from overwhelming technological superiority. Their ships were larger, faster, and more heavily armed than anything humanity possessed. Their soldiers were stronger, tougher, and better equipped than human forces. By every measure the galaxy used to calculate military strength, the coming confrontation would be a massacre. The aliens expected humanity to surrender quickly once they realized the futility of resistance. The draconic fleet that emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the solar system was designed to be an overwhelming display of force. 63 warships arranged in perfect formation, led by the massive dreadnought Fist of Dominion. Supreme, Battle Captain Thraenox Prime stood on his flagship's bridge, confident that the sight of such power would convince the humans to surrender without firing a shot. Admiral Morrison watched the enemy fleet approach from the bridge of his new flagship, the UES Defiance. The ship looked crude compared to the sleek alien vessels, but appearances were deceiving. Hidden beneath its rough exterior were innovations that no alien engineer had ever conceived. Weapon systems designed by minds that thought differently about warfare than any species in the galaxy. Admiral, incoming transmission from the draconic flagship, reported Commander Carol Stevens from her position at the communication station. They're demanding immediate surrender under Confederation. Protective Mandate 847. Morrison nodded and stepped toward the main screen. Put them through, Commander. Supreme Battle Captain Thraenox Prime's reptilian face filled the display, his expression radiating the confidence of absolute superiority. Human Admiral, I am here to bring order to this system. Your species has proven incapable of governing itself responsibly. Surrender your vessels immediately and this transition will proceed peacefully. Morrison studied the alien commander for a moment before responding. I appreciate the offer, Battle Captain, but we'll have to decline. This is sovereign human territory, and your fleet is not welcome here. The draconic commander's expression shifted to amusement. Admiral, surely you understand the situation. You face the combined might of 63 combat vessels with what appears to be 12 primitive ships. Are you seriously contemplating resistance? Morrison's fleet was indeed outnumbered by more than 5 to 1. 8 destroyers, 3 cruisers, and his flagship against a force that could sterilize planets. By every calculation known to galactic military science, it was hopeless. The draconic vessels had stronger shields, more powerful weapons, and crews that were individually superior to humans in every physical measure. Maybe we are outnumbered, Morrison acknowledged calmly. But you're about to learn something your tactical computers never accounted for. The battle began exactly as draconic war simulations had predicted. Their plasma cannons and particle beams tore through human defensive shields with devastating efficiency. The destroyer UES Courage was destroyed in the opening salvo, its crew, of 200 vaporized in an instant of superheated plasma. But what happened next defied every principle of galactic military doctrine. Instead of retreating or forming defensive clusters as standard tactics demanded, the human ships scattered in patterns that seemed random and suicidal. The destroyer UES Relentless, commanded by Captain Ryan Murphy, deliberately flew into the middle of 4 draconic vessels. As enemy fire concentrated on his ship, Murphy waited until the last possible moment before detonating his reactor core. The explosion was so close that it destroyed 1 enemy destroyer and crippled 3 others, taking Murphy and his entire crew with it. What are they doing? Demanded Battle Captain Zorak 7 from his command ship. Their tactical behavior makes no sense. They are sacrificing valuable assets for minimal tactical gain. Commander Nicole Taylor of the UES Persistence used her ship's damaged reactor to create false heat signatures throughout the battlefield. While draconic gunners wasted precious seconds acquiring targeting locks on phantom ships, human vessels struck from unexpected angles with weapons the aliens had never seen before. The real shock came when the destroyer, UES Wolverine, critically damaged and apparently dead in space, suddenly accelerated at maximum burn toward the draconic cruiser Voidrender. Captain Linda Hayes and her crew had already evacuated to hidden escape pods, but they had rigged their ship's navigation system for one final mission. The impact between the 2 vessels broke both ships apart in a spectacular explosion. But the Human escape pods had been equipped with salvaged weapons and began attacking nearby draconic ships from point-blank range. The pods were too small for the alien sensors to track effectively, turning each one into a miniature torpedo that could strike without warning. Supreme Battle Captain Thrinox Prime watched his tactical displays with growing confusion and alarm. Human losses were heavy, but they were inflicting damage far beyond what their numbers should have allowed. More importantly, they showed no signs of breaking or retreating, despite suffering casualties that would have shattered any alien formation. "Sir, the human tactics are completely outside our combat parameters," reported his tactical officer. "They are accepting loss ratios that our models classify as impossible for any rational commander." The turning point came when Admiral Morrison's flagship engaged the Fist of Dominion in single combat. Both ships had taken heavy damage during the battle, but the draconic dreadnought still outgunned the human vessel by a significant margin. "You have fought well for primitives," Thrinox Prime acknowledged over the communication channel. "But this ends now. Surrender, and I will ensure your crew receives honorable treatment." Morrison's response would be remembered throughout human space for generations. "You're right, Battle Captain. This does end now." Instead of trying to outfight the superior vessel, the Defiance did something no alien commander had ever witnessed. It accelerated directly toward the draconic ship on a collision course, using its damaged reactor core as a massive kinetic weapon. The impact between the two flagships created an explosion visible from Earth's orbital stations. Both vessels were completely destroyed, but the blast wave damaged or destroyed 6 nearby draconic ships and left a dozen others with critical system failures. When the battle ended 3 hours later, only 2 human ships remained operational out of the original 12. The draconic fleet had lost 28 vessels destroyed or crippled beyond repair. By any rational military calculation, the Draconics had won a decisive victory, but something unprecedented happened. The surviving Draconic commanders ordered a complete withdrawal from the solar system. The alien crews had never faced an enemy willing to trade ships on equal terms, much less accept the casualties the humans had sustained. Their military doctrine was built on the assumption that superior force would cause inferior opponents to surrender or retreat. The concept of fighting to mutual annihilation was completely foreign to their experience. Battle Captain Zorak 7, now the senior surviving Draconic commander, transmitted his withdrawal orders with shaking hands. "All ships retreat to hyperspace immediately. We are returning to Draconic space for reinforcement and strategic reassessment." The implications of his decision rippled through the Draconic command structure within hours. If humans were willing to fight this desperately for their home system, conquering human space would require completely destroying the human species. The cost in ships and personnel would be enormous, and the strategic value questionable. More significantly, the Draconic military had built their reputation on quick, decisive victories against intimidated opponents. A long, costly war against fanatically determined humans would undermine their authority throughout their empire and encourage rebellion among their subject species. The retreat from Sol sent shockwaves through galactic civilization. Never in recorded history had a protected species not only resisted superior force but inflicted casualties that made conquest economically unviable. The news spread through the Confederation communication networks within days, reaching every corner of galactic space. On Earth, the surviving crews of the human fleet were welcomed home as heroes. The cost had been terrible. Over 2,000 human lives lost in a single afternoon, but they had achieved something the aliens thought impossible. They had made humanity too expensive to conquer. President Hamilton addressed the world from the steps of the United Nations building, with the surviving ships of Morrison's fleet visible in orbit overhead. Today we proved that human strength was never measured correctly by those who thought they knew us. Our strength was never in our technology or our individual capabilities. Our strength is in our willingness to stand together and fight for what we believe in, no matter the cost. The Battle of Sol lasted only 3 hours, but its consequences would reshape galactic politics for centuries. The alien assumption that humans would accept subjugation rather than face destruction had been catastrophically wrong. Humanity had chosen to stand unbroken, and the galaxy would never see them as weak again. In the days that followed, intelligence reports revealed the true extent of the victory. 3 client species of the Draconic Empire had declared independence, confident that their oppressors lacked the will for costly military campaigns. The reputation for invincibility that the Draconics had spent centuries building had been shattered by a handful of human ships crewed by people willing to die for freedom. The aliens had thought humans were weak because they measured strength in terms of individual power and technological superiority. They discovered too late that human strength came from an entirely different source, the unbreakable determination to remain free, no matter what the cost. 6 months after joining the Galactic Confederation, humanity faced its first major political crisis. The mining rights dispute over the Kepler 442 system revealed the true nature of galactic politics and showed just how little the aliens thought of human capabilities. The Kepler 442 system contained 3 planets rich in rare minerals that were essential for advanced technology. During the integration negotiations, the Confederation had promised these mining rights to humanity as part of their welcome package. The system was supposed to provide Earth with the resources needed to begin upgrading their primitive technology to galactic standards. Senator Kate Williams had arrived at the Confederation capital, expecting a simple legal formality to transfer the mining rights. Instead, she found herself facing a hostile tribunal dominated by representatives from the Draconic Empire. The Draconics were a reptilian species known throughout the galaxy for their aggressive expansion and military might. General Theric Prime of the Draconic fleet stood before the tribunal and made his argument with cold efficiency. The humans lack the physical capability to properly exploit these resources, he declared. Look at their frail bodies and primitive equipment. They would need decades just to establish basic mining operations, while the Draconic Empire could have full extraction facilities operational within months. The tribunal consisted of 7 judges from different alien species, but none of them seemed interested in hearing the human perspective. Senator Williams presented detailed plans showing how human mining techniques could extract resources without damaging the planetary ecosystems, but the judges dismissed these concerns as irrelevant. Environmental preservation is a luxury for species with abundant resources, said Judge Korvac of the Zentorian Coalition. The galaxy needs these minerals immediately, not after decades of cautious human development. The Draconic legal team painted humans as weak children who had been given toys they could not properly use. They showed holographic displays comparing human physical strength to Draconic workers, human technology to Draconic machinery, and human industrial capacity to Draconic output. By every metric, humans appeared inadequate for the task. When Senator Williams tried to present evidence of human innovation and adaptability, the tribunal ruled it irrelevant to the case. The only factors they would consider were current technological capability and physical strength. By those standards, humanity had no chance of winning. The decision came down 3 days later. The Kepler 442 system was awarded to the Draconic Empire, and humanity's claim was dismissed. When Senator Williams attempted to file an appeal, she was informed that protected species had limited legal recourse in resource disputes involving full-member civilizations. The news of the tribunal's decision reached Earth during a joint session of the United Nations. President John Hamilton watched the anger spread across the faces of world leaders as they realized what had happened. Humanity had been robbed of their promised resources through a legal system rigged against them. General Lisa Parker, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, delivered a presentation that laid out the implications of the decision. This is not just about mining rights, she explained to the assembled leaders. This is about establishing precedent. If we accept this ruling, we are accepting permanent second-class status in galactic civilization. The data she presented was sobering. In the 6 months since joining the Confederation, every major proposal humanity had made was either rejected or assigned to alien oversight. Every resource allocation had favored established powers over human needs. Earth was becoming a client, state, rather than an equal member of galactic society. Admiral Jake Morrison, now promoted after his successful first contact mission, had spent months observing Confederation military exercises. His intelligence reports revealed disturbing patterns. In alien military thinking, their strategies relied heavily on overwhelming technological superiority and individual combat prowess, but showed significant weaknesses in areas that humans considered essential. They have no concept of asymmetric warfare, Morrison reported to the Joint Chiefs. Their battle simulations always assume roughly equal technology levels and similar tactical approaches. They have never faced an enemy that was willing to accept heavy losses to achieve strategic objectives. The final insult came when the Confederation's military assessment team arrived on Earth to evaluate human defensive capabilities. War Commander Velthar of the Mantari led a team that spent 2 weeks examining human military installations, weapon systems, and training procedures. Their final report was a masterpiece of condescension wrapped in technical language. Human infantry units demonstrate minimal individual combat effectiveness, it stated. Their projectile weapons rely on chemical propulsion, placing them several technological generations behind galactic standards. Their vehicles lack energy shielding, stealth capabilities, and atmospheric independence. The report went on to detail every perceived weakness in human military doctrine. Human soldiers were too small and weak to operate standard galactic weapons. Human tactics relied too heavily on coordination between multiple units rather than individual excellence. Human commanders seemed unwilling to sacrifice valuable personnel for tactical advantages. The assessment team's recommendations were even more insulting than their findings. Humanity should abandon any pretense of military capability and focus instead on civilian services. Agricultural production, basic manufacturing, and cultural entertainment were suggested as appropriate roles for humans in galactic society. Military responsibilities should be left to species with proper biological and technological qualifications. What the alien assessors completely failed to understand was that every weakness they identified represented a different approach to solving problems rather than an actual limitation. Human tactics emphasized coordination because humans had learned that working together made them stronger than the sum of their parts. Human commanders valued personnel because they understood that experience and training were more valuable than raw physical capability. As the assessment team prepared to leave Earth, they were confident they had provided valuable guidance to a primitive species. Their report would help the Confederation make informed decisions about how to integrate humans into galactic civilization without expecting too much from them. Back on the Confederation capital, the alien leadership reviewed the assessment with satisfaction. The humans had been properly categorized and their role in galactic society clearly defined. There would be no more confusion about human capabilities or inappropriate expectations about their contributions. Admiral Kayla 9 of the Mantari military shared the report with his staff and expressed his relief that the human question had been resolved. They will make adequate farmers and entertainers, he concluded. Perhaps in a few centuries of guided development, they might qualify for more technical roles. The Draconic Empire was particularly pleased with the assessment. General Theric Prime used it to justify expanding draconic influence into several systems that had previously been marked for human development. After all, if humans could not handle military responsibilities, they certainly could not handle territorial administration. But while the aliens celebrated their successful management of the human problem, they failed to notice the changes already beginning on Earth. The humiliation of the tribunal and the dismissive assessment had awakened something in humanity that had been dormant since their integration into galactic society. President Hamilton authorized the formation of a classified military research program with unlimited funding and complete autonomy. Project Phoenix began operations in hidden facilities throughout the solar system, with a mandate to prepare humanity for whatever challenges lay ahead. The aliens had measured human strength by alien standards and found it wanting. They had assumed that human acceptance of their inferior status was permanent. They had calculated that human military capabilities would remain static while alien technology continued to advance. All of these assumptions were about to be tested in ways the aliens could never have imagined. The species they had dismissed as weak and primitive was about to demonstrate that strength came in many forms, and that underestimating an opponent was the first step toward defeat. The galaxy was about to learn that human weakness was not what it appeared to be, and that the most dangerous enemies were often those who had nothing left to lose. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Guardian and watched the massive alien space station grow larger in the viewscreen. 3 years had passed since first contact with the aliens, and now humanity was finally being invited to join their galactic community. The space station called Nexus Prime was bigger than any city on Earth, with towers that stretched for miles and docking bays that could hold 1,000 ships. Ambassador Lisa Carter walked onto the bridge wearing her best diplomatic uniform. She had spent months preparing for this moment, learning alien customs and languages. The future of humanity depended on making a good first impression with the Galactic Confederation. The docking process took 2 hours because human ships were so much smaller than what the aliens were used to. When they finally connected to the station, Jake could see 3 different types of aliens waiting for them in the docking bay. The Xerians were tall and looked like they were made of living crystal, with bodies that glowed with soft blue light. The Hydros had smooth blue skin that seemed to shimmer like water, and they moved with flowing grace. The Mantari looked like giant insects walking on 2 legs, with hard shells covering their bodies and 4 arms each. Council Prime Zexval of the Xerians stepped forward to greet them. His voice came through their translators with perfect clarity. "Welcome to Nexus Prime, humans. We have watched your species with great interest. Your rapid progress despite your physical limitations is quite remarkable." Dr. Paul Bennett, the mission's scientist who studied alien life, noticed something in the alien's tone that made him uncomfortable. The words sounded friendly, but there was something underneath that felt like they were being talked down to. Still, he smiled and nodded politely as they began their tour of the station. The technology they saw was beyond anything humans had imagined. The Xerians could change the shape of metal just by touching it. The Hydros created electrical fields around their bodies that could power machines. The Mantari had natural armor that could stop bullets and strength that let them lift cars with one hand. Admiral Kayla 9 of the Mantari military made several comments during the tour that bothered the human delegation. "Your bone structure is quite weak," he said while examining scans of human physiology. "Your muscle fibers are inefficient compared to most species. Most concerning is your complete lack of natural defenses. No claws, no armor, no energy projection abilities. How do you survive on your homeworld?" Commander Amy Rodriguez, who was in charge of security for the Guardian, kept her face neutral even though she felt insulted. She had noticed that the aliens kept looking at the humans like they were children playing dress-up. Every question they asked seemed designed to point out human weaknesses rather than understand human strengths. The formal ceremony to welcome humanity into the Confederation took place in a great hall that could hold 10,000 beings. Representatives from dozens of alien species attended, though most seemed more curious than welcoming. The human delegation sat in a section marked for developing species, along with several other races that looked primitive by galactic standards. When the ceremony concluded, humanity was officially granted protected species status within the Confederation. This meant they would receive medical technology and limited trading rights, but they were forbidden from having military ships or weapons beyond their current level. The classification was typically used for civilizations that were not considered ready for full independence. Lisa felt her heart sink as she read through the terms of their membership. They were being treated like children who needed supervision, rather than equals who could contribute to galactic society. The aliens spoke about humanity's potential and how they might evolve to become more capable in the future, but for now they needed protection and guidance. After the ceremony, the human delegation was given quarters in a section of the station, designed for visiting dignitaries from lesser species. The rooms were comfortable but clearly not the same quality as what the major alien races received. Everything about their treatment reinforced the message that humans were inferior beings who should be grateful for any attention at all. That evening, Jake walked through the observation decks of the station and watched alien ships coming and going. The smallest of their vessels was larger than humanity's biggest warship. Their technology was centuries ahead of anything humans possessed. By every measure the aliens used to judge species, humanity was weak and primitive. But as Jake, watched, he noticed something interesting about the alien ships. They all followed the same basic designs and used similar technologies. There was no variety in their approaches to problems, no innovation in their methods. They had become so advanced that they had stopped trying new things. Paul spent the evening in the station's library, studying records of galactic history. What he found was troubling but also revealing. Every major conflict in galactic history had been decided by one side having better technology or stronger individual warriors. The concept of winning through creativity, teamwork, or determination was almost completely absent from their military records. Amy used her time to observe alien security procedures and military protocols. She noticed that their guards were incredibly strong and well-armed, but they followed rigid patterns and seemed unable to adapt when something unexpected happened. Their strength was also their weakness because they had never needed to be flexible. Meanwhile, back in the alien council chambers, the various species were discussing their new human members. The recordings of their conversations would later prove very revealing about their true feelings. "They are physically weak," said Admiral Kayla 9. "Their technology is primitive. Their lifespans are short even by biological standards. I fail to see what contribution they could make to our civilization." Council Prime Zexval agreed. "They seem earnest enough, but they lack the basic capabilities necessary for meaningful participation in galactic affairs. Perhaps in a few thousand years of guided development, they might become useful." The consensus among the alien leadership was clear. Humans were harmless curiosities at best, potential burdens at worst. They posed no threat to the established order and would likely remain dependent on alien guidance for the foreseeable future. As the human delegation prepared to return to Earth the next day, they carried with them the knowledge that they had been measured and found wanting by galactic standards. But they also carried something else: a growing understanding that the alien strengths might also be their greatest vulnerabilities. The journey back to Earth was quiet, as each member of the delegation processed what they had experienced. They had gone to the stars hoping to find equals, and instead found masters who saw them as pets. The question now was what humanity would do with this knowledge. The aliens thought they understood human weakness, but they had made a fundamental error in their assessment. They measured strength in terms of individual power and technological advancement, never considering that there might be other forms of strength that could prove just as valuable. Time would reveal just how wrong their assumptions had been.